the idea that autism has been around forever, it almost has a certain logic to it. You know, why wouldn't it have been? I mean, Down syndrome appears to have been around forever. That's another topic of discussion too. But you know, what would cause something like this to suddenly appear and to grab the attention of someone who had just recently covered the entire field and now is saying, this is new to me? So we have a theory about that. It's a somewhat contrary theory to what orthodoxy I've just been describing, but Mark will discuss our theory.
So if you think about the timing, Leo Kanner wrote this textbook, 500 pages, in 1935. He was the world's expert on child psychiatry. Not a whisper in that textbook, in the entire textbook, of anything that resembles autism. In 1943, he writes that first paper, and he writes about the first child he saw in 1938, who was born a few years before that. And so, you know, the question is, if autism is ancient, if it's always been with us, then how many cases had been overlooked before Leo Kanner saw Donald? And that's actually something you can calculate, and you can sort of put a rough dimension. And I do this from, you start from a starting point of how many people have ever lived on Earth. And there was a paper that was published in 2002 that estimated by 2002 in the total history of human beings from 50,000 BC, when roughly the first humans were, you know, had evolved, to the present, we've had something over 100 billion human beings born in the history of the Earth, which is an interesting number. But the more interesting number is if you start in 1930 and you say, okay, Leo Kanner saw all these cases in children born after 1930. If autism had existed forever beforehand, how many, you know, what was the population base that somehow in which autism had been overlooked? So you can ask the question, before 1930, and I use this paper to sort of say roughly 100 billion people had been born in the history of the world before Leo Kanner saw Donald. And if you believe that autism is ancient, that it has always been with us, that somehow we're getting better at diagnosing these fascinating, uniquely and markedly different people, you would have to believe, if you accept the rate of 1 in 100, that there were 1 billion autistic people before Leo Kanner saw Donald that were somehow overlooked. No mention in literature, in folklore, in the medical, millions of pages of medical texts and documents and articles were written before that 1943 paper. I submit that's absurd. Anybody who has ever met an autistic child knows, and one of Kanner's colleagues said that, you know, he didn't believe that Leo Kanner had seen autism, but then he saw his first cases of autism, and he said these children were as like each other as one raindrop is to another. So something happened. Autism was new. Before Leo Kanner, the rate of autism was effectively 0. Remember that.